Welcome to the Iferia TechCast, where we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today we are joined by Nishanth Sirikonda, a Workday solutions architect and AI-driven technology strategist with over a decade of experience designing scalable, secure enterprise systems. She specializes in integrating artificial intelligence and machine learning into core business operations like HR and payroll, transforming complex data into intelligent workflows that enhance decision making and operational efficiency. In this episode, we'll explore his systematic approach to building the data foundations for AI and how to architect enterprise systems that seamlessly blends human insights with machine intelligence. So, Nishant, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Feria TechCast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ezekiel. First of all, thanks for having me on your podcast session. So this is Nishanth Sirikonda, but you can call me Nish. I'm a Workday architect overall. 10 plus years of experience in the Workday world. I deal with most of the architecture level of the HCM payroll, the critical data of the humans, like the day-to-day life. And my work is centered on building artificial systems that actually survive real enterprise environments, the global payrolls, HCM platforms, and the highly regulated ecosystems. So where failure is not an option. So I spend most of my time thinking about how artificial intelligence into enterprise architecture, workflows, and decision making, and also how to scale it responsibly and govern it properly and make sure it creates trust, not risk. So for me, enterprise architecture, enterprise artificial intelligence is less about models and more about systems. So that's my innovation started towards this architecture level for the especially on the workday side versus the HCM payroll staff. The kind of I'm kind of a guy dig into everywhere where this can be automated instead of doing like manual process taking more than the machine. Man is doing more than that the machine, so I want to automate that process. Let me give an example. Like the previously we used to have in the legacy system the paper checks, like every week or bi-weekly based upon your work you'll get the paper checks. But now it's automated as a banking system, that is direct deposit. You're getting your pay every week, bi-weekly through your bank. So that's where the automation, I'm kind of a focused and structured guy.
All right. So, Nishant, you're at the fascinating intersection of enterprise architecture and AI strategy. So, what was a specific project or moment that made you realize that AI wasn't just another feature to add, but a fundamental layer that could rewrite how entire business system operates?
I mean, technically speaking, the AI is fast facing approaching world today. So it's almost there in all the industries, but the less in the area of the HCM payroll and the human data thing. Like why?
Hmm.
Because especially the data integrity and lineage are non-negotiable. All right, the artificial intelligent decision must be traceable and auditable. For in the case
Mm-hmm.
of the where I'm dealing with the sensitive data, and at the same time, architecture for heterogeneous data sources like legacy system, regional platforms, and third-party providers, where it includes the sensitivity of the data exchange. So, in order to do that, a careful artificial intelligence is must be enhanced in this role. So that's where I got motivated to do that. How do I get into the artificial intelligence that touch base and introduce with our systems? Like but where we cannot compromise the security, privacy, and complaints. So these all must be built in the architecture, not layered, like the step by step. Everything has to be. So the motivation or kind of an example, in global payroll systems. Okay, I spoke most of the payroll time because I deal with every day the architecture's mind. So in global payroll system, artificial intelligence may be used for anomaly detection, forecasting, or compliance validation. All right, these models must operate across regions with different tax laws, data standards, and process cycles, often near real time. So that's where still the artificial intelligence not there in the scope of this system, but trying to evolve more into an more than a human thinking.
Okay, so Nishant, you emphasize that the data quality is a critical foundation for AI success. So, what does your systematic process for auditing and preparing an organization's data for AI actually look like?
See where it has, everybody build the system and later thinks about the security. All right. But here in this platform, I would recommend you start with the security, start with the data privacy, that start with the planning of that. So
Mm,
when you have your data integrity as a secured platform, how many security features you're going to implement, it's up to you because that's your data. You need to protect that. But most of the organizations or most of the industries, they will deploy everything and they forgot about the any important part of the security. But you need to secure before you deploy that, so that and step by step process, like every time when you deploy something through an artificial intelligence or like a manual intervention, but there should be an important things to consider. You want to have a planning before the data breaches happen, or or you need to plan ahead. If the data breaches happen, how do I secure this data? So that's where artificial intelligence, the cloning of a system involves more deep and the deeper now. Because when things goes wrong, to run the 1,000 scripts or maybe 1 lakh scripts to retrieve the data, to run the reports to from the data to get it back, the human it takes like an years. For an artificial intelligence, for the machines, they'll get it like in seconds because every time the data is feed into that. So you have to plan before the deploy for the security, the privacy concerns, not at the stage of once all done. If you're planning for security, I don't believe that, without a foundation, you're building something, in my view.
all right. So, you design intelligent workflows that blend automation with human input. So, can you walk us through, like, a real world example, perhaps, in payroll or HR, where you designed a system that allowed a machine and a person to collaboratively make better decision than either could do alone?
Absolutely. That's a great question. The designing intelligent workforce is a combination of automation plus human decision making. All right.
Mm-hmm.
The core principles, I believe, focus on workflow intelligence, not isolated predictions. Use artificial intelligence to augment decisions, not replace accountability. Define confidency thresholds and escalation path. Make artificial intelligent outputs interpretable at the point of action, not just in dashboards. So these are the core principles when I started the designing intelligent workflows because we are dealing in between both the automation plus human decision making. All right, if you ask an example, an intelligent workflow might flag an anomalous payroll transactions automatically auto resolve with the low risk cases and escalate only high confidence expectations to human reviewer complete with which a context and reasonable. All right, the machine can detect where it needs to be have the human intervention, right? For all the small things, for everything, there is no need of the human interventions needed. Just for awareness is something different. So the machine, the artificial intelligence, it drives you through where your attention is required, where you need to have a more concentrated, and where you are going towards the risk of the factor when you are flagging this anomalous payroll transactions. All right. So over automation versus under automation, right? Excess
Mm-hmm.
automation can erode trust. Too little reduces the ROI operations. So based on this, what lessons learned? All right, the most effective systems use human in the loop or human on the loop designs, where AI handles scale and pattern recognition while humans retain decisions authority for edge cases. So that's where the most of the workflow intelligence I think about that.
Okay, so for the technical leaders listening, what's the most common and costly architectural mistake you see companies make when they rush to implement AI without the proper hidden foundations you often talk about?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, the small companies, I'll come with the small companies first, then go for the bigger companies. The small companies, they are not effort for their privacy and security. That's where they lag into the depends upon the other third party tools. All right. Whereas the bigger companies, an urgency of deploy something, the proper planning is much needed. How do we integrate this data privacy? Like, how do you establish a future reference of your data is secure, or if you're rushing the things, see, the things can be done in like in a week, things can be done in like in a month, but the difference of the quality, the difference of the planning, how you want to do it. So the proper
Mm,
planning is done by the most of the bigger companies, but the afraid of the things needs to be completed fast pace. The smaller companies, they do have the plan and everything, but the problem is they cannot afford the, the cost of the tools that will protect the data. So the both have the similarities, but the bigger companies always want to rush it, the deploy, and we can if something goes wrong, we can take it back or like we can fix it on spot. But the smaller companies, they'll be like, they know everything, but the problem is they have to depend on the third party tools because they cannot have their own tool because of the budgeting, the cost allocations, and
okay, so Nishant, you talk about creating people first automation. So, how do you technically design a system that empowers employees and reduces friction rather than one that just feels like a black box making decisions for them?
everything. Good question. This is like scaling artificial intelligence from pilot mode to like an enterprise impact. All right, but
Mm,
everything, the first thing we have to remember, artificial intelligence is something created by the humans, not like an automation thing, right? You
mm-hmm,
feed the data and years, and you told the system how to return that. All right, still, in this current scenarios, in the current markets, everybody feels like, hey, will take your jobs. AI will not take your jobs, but absolutely you need to one things to consider here. You are the person training that artificial intelligence, right? So the things you're doing in one day today, that's doing in fraction of seconds because a lacks of data, the lacks of the process, you already fit into that. You're using as an automation for now. If you go back to the example like a legacy system, we used to have the like a spreadsheets or like in writing it papers for an accounting and everything. But now it turns into be automation, like you're feeding everything into your spreadsheet, Excel formats, the Word documents, and later on that becomes like the online ones. You can edit anything from anywhere, right? But still the
mm,
humans are performing the jobs, but not like an artificial intelligence, right? You
yeah.
train the process, you train the machine. How do you want to leverage that day to day life? But not like entirely occupying your things and AI can handle it? Absolutely not. But the AI can do more than what we can do because of that's a machine. The difference between the machine and human, the human have a certain time. Like, I only work for 8 hours a day. Machine that is not defined. It's 24 by 7 in operations. So for me, like, avoid one of solutions, build reusable artificial intelligence platforms and services. So you feed the data how you want to use that, but not like replacing you. Absolutely not.
Hmm. Okay. So, with deep expertise in security and governance, Nishan, how do you architect AI systems to be not only powerful but also compliant and ethically sound by design, not as an afterthought?
Okay. All right. So the first point in every deployments or an implementation we used to consider as then data integrity. The data plays major role here. So everybody, if I'm architecting the new deployments of the projects of the with an artificial intelligence, how much I can be do for the planning, how can I use them for my perfect planning instead of going like an phase by phase, or like an I can deploy at a time, or maybe depends upon the data, how much I'm handling it, how do I secure the data, right? So
Hmm.
we need to have a plan, like, somebody says that think it, ink it, plan it. Like, you think here, put something on ink it, like, write on the paper, and you plan for that. Because the human brain is already built for that, and you're giving the commands to the artificial intelligence to how do you want to turn that to be. You are giving one protocol, but it's giving you like in hundreds and hundreds of different approaches, different versions. So it's up to you. How do you want to choose it? How do you want to use the data security? But at the same time, you need to control on the data rather than an AI can do that, because you need to let the AI know. AI need to know that how do you want that artificial intelligence work for you, help for you in this case. It's not like that gonna dictate you what you need to do. So
Hmm.
balancing innovation with a practical implementation, like a separate innovations, like the production codes before you deploy in sandbox environments, testing environments, and use staged rollouts and controlled experimentation. Innovation should always map to a clear business hypothesis, but not in a dictatable way, like an artificial intelligence playing another industries.
All right. So, looking at the current landscape of AI tools, what's one underrated capability or technology you believe will be a game changer for enterprise automation in the next 2 years?
Um, every platform, every industry have their own artificial intelligence. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that we are all talking in the cell phones today, right? With the different companies, right?
Yeah.
I use some services, use some other services, but ultimately, once all connected together, just the data, the bridges are going where it needs to be. So
Mm.
likewise, all the platforms doing the same thing with the different data, with the different models. Like, but there is a race running right now. If I am looking for some new information in the AI models today, there is a competition running. How much fast I can get it for you? Take an example, like maybe I don't know how can I use the words of the Chat GPT, the Gemini AI versus other AI tools. They are running towards the delivering the message like in nanoseconds, microseconds. So according to me, everybody is doing their research, moving towards the artificial intelligence, but soon going to be a game changer in all industries. It's already started, like 3 4 years back. It's already started. No one thought that now we're gonna talk anything about like in fraction of seconds, and robots can replace you, like me, like you. We'll have in future, like, these podcast kind of stuff. Your robo and automation robo will talk about to my robo, and my robo answer the
Mm.
questions. What are you going to say? That's going to come in the future for
Wow.
sure, right? It's already
Mm-hmm.
getting evolved now. The thinking towards the human versus the robots. All right. So in my
Mm.
thinking, in future for an every industry, every area, especially entertainment world, especially in the YouTube world, everywhere. Now we are doing different things in a different way that no one does. But in future, I believe the robotics plays a major role. The robots can talk each other. Like how we having our own mobile today, we're gonna have our own robo in couple of years. Maybe we can expect that. Like, my A agent, the niche A agent, Ezekiel A agent, they can talk to each other and provide the synopsis for you and provide the synopsis for me, just like in your meeting notes.
Okay, Nishan, that was a very insightful response. So, for a student or early career professional aiming for a role like yours, so what's one foundational skill outside of pure coding that you believe is becoming indispensable for the next generation of solutions architects?
Ezekiel, if you ask me, I can say that, the today's students at this generation, they don't need to know any hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything is already ready-made version. Is everything is ready. Okay, if you
Okay,
go
and why is
back
that?
okay, if you go back 20 years, 30 years back, we used to write an assignments with pen and paper, if you remember correctly, right? We used to write and
Yeah.
submit them, right? Later on,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know what? You can write in the computers and you can submit them. And then later on, it becomes now everything is available in the system. You can just copy them,
Mm.
right? You can just copy and paste them. So where the companies and the universities brought plagiarism thing, right? So to data to set like, hey, you cannot mass copying the things. But now today's world, you don't need to invent anything new for the students. All right. You design the way or follow the flow of the way. How do I train this artificial intelligence or maybe in future my robotics the way still the human needs to be existing. The human needs to be have the existence. All right. So if you ask me for my next generation, like, I would say, hey, start with your own workflows. Don't rush for the models because you have the billions of models already ready. But how do you use is very important. All right. So the students
Mm.
invest early in data quality, governance, and observability. All right. Design the systems for trust, explainability, and resilience. You can use the technology, artificial intelligence with the business outcomes, but not the hype things for only the AI can handle. Absolutely not. So my suggestion is very clear for any upcoming engineers. In future, the most of the robotic will replace, but you need to have your own planning. How do you overcome with the robotics? How do you train them?
All right. That was another great response again, Nishant. So, for you, having led global deployments, what has been your biggest lesson in managing the human side of technological change?
Okay, the global one, data fragmentation and schema difference across regions acquired based on the standard laws. All right. So the United States have the different state laws, the taxable laws, and where you go, Singapore is different laws. Every payroll system has a different laws based upon the state, the jurisdictions, and country. So where we use to define an artificial intelligence systems to configurable and modular, not hard coded. All right. Integration sequencing matters. Stabilize first, then optimize with AI. So if I'll give an example, during mergers and acquisition process, we introduced artificial intelligence too early. Can amplify inconsistency between systems. In some cases, Artificial intelligence should be used initially to identify integration risk, then automated decisions. So the lessons learned from this, successful global artificial intelligence deployments prioritize system integrity and trust before advanced intelligence. So again,
Mm.
if you go back, my statement is like in the different global platforms, the global deployments is always different from country to country, state to state, based upon their jurisdiction, based upon their state laws. So we have to be very careful when you go for the global deployment. How early you can engage an AI, not to build, just to understand the process, understand the system, to establish and trust.
Okay, so moving forward, Nishant, where do you see the most significant gap between the hype of AI and the reality of what it can reliably deliver for businesses today?
If you ask me, enterprise artificial intelligence is evolving toward the AI decision infrastructure, increased regularity, oversight, and ethical requirements. More composable, service based AI architectures, the deeper embedding of artificial intelligence into core enterprise platform. The future belongs to organizations that can operationalize intelligence responsibility at scale. So you have the tools to use, but how wisely you can use and what's the limitation of it if you know that. And you cannot go away from the human touch versus the artificial intelligence. All right. In today's world, we don't know which is come from the AI or is designed by the human. But there should be a differentiate in future for sure, which is an AI, which is the human built. So that runs
Mm.
a major role and that runs towards that. Because nowadays we are getting into the AI to get an automation very easy, to get an answers very easy. But in future, everybody is struggling to identify which is an AI, which is an human built. So that's where the
Yeah.
competition runs, the companies.
Mm. So, Nishan, part of the theme of this podcast is centered around innovations. For that reason, I like to reserve at least one question on innovation for every guest I have a conversation with. Yeah, so for you, in your work architecting intelligence systems that blend human workflow with machine intelligence to solve complex business problems, I'd like to know what does the word innovation truly mean to you, Nishant?
Innovation is always, for me, the work which is doing like in weeks and weeks that has to be replaced by the machine.
Mm,
That's the innovation. But again, the machine has to be taught and controlled by the human, not like the machine by machine. All right. So the
yeah,
human definitely needs to have a control on the innovations, and the human needs to know how wisely, how effectively use an artificial intelligence. All right. My point is always very clear. You taught the system, you invented the system. That's not going to replace you because you taught the data to the system. You train the data, you train the system. But if somehow that is replacing you because we becoming lazy. Um, as simple as that. Okay, the system thinking, the lacks of data, like converting into a one line of an action. The humans cannot do that. But how the system is doing, you thought that. So the human brain is more powerful than the artificial intelligence because you invented that. So the innovations is always have a larger scope for the humans because of lot of innovations we are here today. Lot of innovations. I'm talking to you over the podcast. You're sitting somewhere, I'm sitting here, but still we are talking. That's kind of an innovation. Still needs
yeah.
to have an existence. I mean, that's my opinion.
Okay. So finally, Nishan, for our listeners who want to follow your work and learn more about your practical approach to enterprise AI, so where's the best place for them to go connect with you and just generally follow you online?
All right, thanks, Ezekiel. You can follow me on my LinkedIn. You can just type my name as a Nishanth Sirikonda. You can find me there. And I work for the Vasti Foundation as an Workday architect. So you can see everything in my LinkedIn. But this was a great talking to you, Ezekiel. You asked me a lot of questions that reminds me how do I have all the conversations between when we have then a bunch of an architects sitting in one place and arguing why machine is important than rather the human beings. And I was always trying to say that we invented the machine, we architecture the machine. So you need to understand the human versus the AI who is replacing who. But
Hmm.
that's a great show, man. Thank you.